The observation deck of the Zenith outpost hummed with the gentle thrum of life support systems, a sound Mira had grown accustomed to during her 3-month assignment on the edge of Coalition space. She sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor, her thermal coat draped loosely around her shoulders as she reviewed datapad reports. The station orbited a dying star, and the chill seeped through every bulkhead despite the heating systems. Rook stood at the viewport, his massive form silhouetted against the amber glow of the collapsing sun. The Carthaxian commander was nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled hide a deep obsidian that caught the light like polished stone. His species had dominated this sector for millennia, apex predators who had conquered their homeworld before reaching for the stars. Mira had learned quickly that Carthaxians respected strength, and weakness was met with contempt. Human Mira, Rook's voice rumbled like distant thunder. The supply freighter is delayed. Another solar flare. She glanced up from her datapad. How long? 36 hours. Perhaps more. His amber eyes, slit-pupilled and unblinking, fixed on her. The temperature will drop further. Your kind is fragile in the cold. There was no malice in his tone, only statement of fact. Humans were fragile. Their bodies couldn't withstand vacuum, extreme temperatures, or most toxins that other Coalition species shrugged off. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses, and yet, somehow, they'd earned a seat at the galactic table. Mira smiled faintly. I'll manage, Commander. A soft chirping sound drew her attention to the corridor entrance. 2 small shapes tumbled through the doorway. Rook's offspring. Mira had only seen them twice before, always from a distance. Carthaxian young were rarely brought to outposts, but Rook's mate had died in a border skirmish, leaving him as the sole caretaker. The cubs were perhaps 3 feet long, their scales still soft and mottled gray-green. They moved with the awkward energy of children everywhere, wrestling and nipping at each other. But their teeth were already sharp, their claws already hooked. In a few years, they would be formidable predators. Rook's demeanor shifted instantly. Go to quarters. Now. The cubs froze, their eyes wide. Then, in a display of universal childhood defiance, they scattered, one diving behind a supply crate, the other scurrying directly toward Mira. She stayed very still as the second cub approached, its head tilted in curiosity. Up close, she could see the delicate membrane over its eyes, the way its nostrils flared as it scented her. To this creature, she was alien, unknown, potentially dangerous. The cub crept closer, then without warning burrowed beneath the edge of her coat. Mira felt its cold scales against her leg, the surprising weight of its body. She glanced at Rook, who had gone rigid, his hand moving instinctively toward the plasma sidearm at his hip. Commander, she said softly. It's all right. They are predators, Rook growled. Even young, they can. I know. Mira adjusted her coat slightly, creating more space. The second cub, seeing its sibling's boldness, abandoned its hiding spot and waddled over. Within moments, it too had wormed its way beneath the thermal fabric. The cubs settled against her, their bodies trembling. They weren't being aggressive, they were cold. The station's heating prioritized essential systems, and the observation deck was far from essential. Rook approached slowly, every movement controlled. They could injure you. Their instincts are to seek warmth, Mira interrupted gently. Just like any child. She felt the cubs' breathing begin to slow, their bodies relaxing against her. One of them made a sound halfway between a purr and a growl. The other's tail curled around her ankle. Rook stared at her, his expression unreadable. In Carthaxian culture, young were protected fiercely, but physical affection was rare. Predators didn't coddle, they taught through challenge, through survival. The weak were culled by nature itself. Your species confuses me, Rook said finally. You have no claws, no venom, no armor. You should not have survived your own world, much less reached the stars. And yet, Mira prompted. You do not fear my children. You do not see them as threats to eliminate. You see them as—" He struggled for the word. "Cubs," Mira supplied. "Just cubs, who are cold and miss their mother." Something shifted in Rook's eyes, not quite understanding, but recognition. He lowered himself to the floor across from her, his massive frame folding with surprising grace. They sat in silence for several minutes. Mira kept her breathing steady, her movements minimal. The cubs' trembling had stopped entirely now. Their scales, which had been cold to the touch, were warming against her body heat. "When I first met humans," Rook said quietly, "I thought you would be easy to conquer. Your military was adequate, but nothing exceptional. Your technology borrowed from a dozen species. Your worlds were soft, comfortable." Mira smiled. "What changed your mind?" "I saw a human medic run into crossfire to retrieve a wounded Carthaxian soldier. She was shot 3 times. She kept going." Rook's claws tapped against the floor. "I saw human engineers jury-rig a failing reactor with spare parts and thermal tape, saving 2,000 lives. I saw human diplomats talk down a warlord who had razed 17 colonies." He looked at the sleeping cubs beneath Mira's coat. "You do not survive because you are the strongest. You survive because you are the most stubborn, the most adaptable, the most inexplicably compassionate." One of the cubs snored softly, a sound like grinding pebbles. Mira bit back, a laugh. "We're not special," she said. "We're just persistent. And we have a bad habit of adopting things that probably want to eat us." Rook's laugh was like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "Yes, I have noticed this about your kind." The hours passed. The temperature continued to drop, but Mira didn't move. Her legs went numb, then tingly, then numb again. Rook remained across from her, a silent guardian. Though whether he was protecting his children from her or her from his children, she couldn't say. When the cubs finally woke, they emerged from beneath the coat with sheepish expressions. If such a thing were possible on reptilian faces, they chirped apologetically and scurried to their father's side. Rook stood, lifting each cub with careful claws. "Thank you, human Mira." She flexed her stiff legs and grinned. "Anytime, Commander." As they left, one of the cubs looked back at her, its amber eyes bright with recognition. Mira waved. In the vast darkness of space, surrounded by species that could tear her apart without effort, Mira understood something fundamental. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been strength. It was the willingness to be gentle when the galaxy expected cruelty, to offer warmth when everything else was cold, to pretend not to notice when predator cubs crawled under your coat, because sometimes everyone just needed to feel safe. And that, more than any warship or weapon, was what made humans terrifying. They refused to stop caring.